This is the Film Symbologist. Welcome to the channel. This is the 28th episode of the Prometheus analysis series where I delve into Ridley Scott's 2012 science fiction film. If you haven't seen previous installments, I suggest checking those out. In this video, I will discuss epistemology, which is one of the film's central themes. Questions like, what is knowledge? How do we know things? What are the limits of human knowledge? And what differentiates a justified belief from an opinion, all underlie many aspects of the film. Early on in the film, during a dream sequence, the character of Shaw asks her father what happens to people after death. He claims that people go to paradise. The fledgling scientist asks how he knows, which prompts a curious response.
Why did he die?
Sooner or later, everyone does.
Where do they go?
Heaven. Paradise.
How do you know?
Because that's what I choose to believe. What do you believe?
At first glance, it seems like Shaw's father doesn't really answer the question. Shaw asked about what he knows, not what he believes. But his non-answer kind of is an answer. He doesn't know what happens to people after they die. Whether nothing happens or their souls go to paradise, he doesn't have any definitive proof either way. So in the absence of evidence, he is free to choose what to believe. He seems content with the limits of his knowledge. Shaw, on the other hand, is not satisfied with mere belief. She studies mythology, memetics, and archaeology, and looks for evidence to inform her beliefs. She wants to use the scientific method to find proof of what happens after death. She wants to convert her beliefs into knowledge.
Because there's a difference in what a scientist knows and what they believe. That difference is proof.
In the last episode, I discussed what is depicted in the so-called star maps that Shaw and Holloway discover and then present to the crew during the debriefing scene. According to Holloway, the artifacts are maps to a distant star system. For Shaw, they are invitations. Shaw's claim contains multiple assertions. First, it suggests that mankind was engineered by an intelligent designer. Second, that the giant beings in the artifacts are these designers. Third, the distant star system is where these designers live. And fourth, humans have been invited to visit. Unsurprisingly, these radical claims are questioned by other scientists among the crew.
They engineered us.
Okay, so, do you have anything to back that up? How do you know?
I don't. But it's what I choose to believe.
Contrary to what many critics have said, Shaw's answer is not making a scientific claim that she knows something is true merely because she believes it. She is saying that she doesn't know if what she believes is true. Her beliefs, when combined with the artifacts, are enough to propose a theory that can be proven or disproven. And given adequate resources, her hypothesis can be tested. The definitive proof she needs may only come from traveling to and investigating LV-223. There's another aspect of Shaw's answer that also deserves consideration. The scientist claims that she's chosen her belief. Has she really? Or has she inherited her beliefs from her father? Can Shaw, or any person for that matter, choose what to believe? Do we select our beliefs from a menu of different options through a conscious process? If so, what criteria do we use for selecting our beliefs? Do we choose the beliefs for which there is the most empirical evidence? The beliefs that best align with our own subjective experiences? Or the beliefs that we think will benefit us the most in the short term? Do we inherit our beliefs from the people that we've observed, interacted with, and been raised by? And when our beliefs are challenged, how often do we respond with a well-reasoned rebuttal, complete with a list of evidence for our beliefs? And how often do we automatically feel slighted and respond with ad hominem insults? How easily do we become aware of new information, incorporate that information into our thinking, and change our opinions or behavior based on new evidence? Are we more likely than not to dismiss new or contrarian evidence as unreliable? How good are we at discerning the accuracy of different pieces of evidence? How do we judge whether or not a source of information can be relied upon? Do our minds compare and contrast data through a system of analysis that we understand and are consciously aware of? Do we tend to trust people that we admire and distrust people we dislike? Why do we admire some people and dislike others? Is it based on an objective analysis of their behavior, our feelings at the time? Or is it usually more about our perceptions of their social status, and if we think agreeing with them will be rewarded in some manner? Are we good at dissociating the ideas people have and the behaviors people exhibit from the people expressing those ideas or exhibiting those behaviors? Do we often conflate the cargo with the vessel and vice versa? When making decisions, how often do we evaluate each possible outcome on its own merits versus drawing from intuition, past experiences, and preconceived ideas? How many mental shortcuts do we take in a day to navigate the world? How many of these shortcuts are we conscious of? How often do we conflate our beliefs and opinions with facts? It seems to me that neither Shaw nor us can choose what we believe. We are compelled to believe what we do based on complex systems we are barely aware of. Based on our awareness and discernment of new information, our beliefs can change, but through a process that is hardly under the control of our conscious minds. Over the course of Scott's film, Shaw does not lose her underlying faith in a benevolent creator God, but her experiences do cause her to reevaluate her initial beliefs about who the engineers are and what LV-223 is. By the end, she decides that she was wrong. The moon world is not a place where humanity can find definitive answers to existential questions, and the so-called engineers are not who she thought they were. Could Shaw have arrived at these conclusions without experiencing what she did? Should she have been more skeptical of her own beliefs? Or did she need to experience what she did in order to test her beliefs? Why couldn't she have just been content in her beliefs and remained on Earth? Yannick seems content with not knowing who the engineers are. Her father seemed content in his beliefs. Why does she have to know? And why didn't her experiences on LV-223 convince her that her entire worldview, not just the bit about the LV-223 engineers, was wrong? In the end, has she really learned from her experiences, or is she departing LV-223 with the same false hope that she first departed Earth with? When it comes to your own reasoning, how often are you convinced merely by what someone tells you? Don't you need to see and experience things for yourself in order to know for sure? But even when you are shown, how often do you still doubt what you see and hold on to the comfort of your initial idea? Our senses pick up only a fraction of the sensory information that is out there. The naked eye doesn't see ultraviolet light, our sense of smell is shallow compared to a dog's, and our hearing is weak compared to an owl's. Even with our technology, we still only perceive the surface level of possible meaning. As seen in the film, Fifield scanners map out the interior of the pyramid, but this only tells us a tiny fraction of what the pyramid has to offer. Shaw sees glimpses of ceiling murals and relief sculptures. David offers a bit more information to the crew and the audience through his interactions with the green goo and the hieroglyphics and controls. But still, only a tiny portion of the recordings, rooms, and capabilities of the dome structures are observed. The crew's advanced suits, helmets, and displays provide little assistance in truly seeing what the pyramid has to offer. They might as well be walking around with blinders, earmuffs, face masks, and gloves that dull their senses. To some extent, that is what they're doing. When it comes to deciphering what LV-223 has to offer, the crew barely scratches the surface. The same thing can be said about the audience in our attempts to understand the story being told in Prometheus. Scott's film can be thought of as a puzzle to solve. To do so, we'll need to heighten our senses, particularly our abilities to perceive symbolism and discern between what's true and what's false. Within the 2-hour runtime, we are only given fragments of the full narrative. We're presented with plenty of misdirection and unreliable information from the characters. And our own biases and preconceived ideas further mislead us. In part, this YouTube series seeks to flesh out the story by looking at some of the references to other works of art, and by providing a peek at what lies below the surface of a story about a bunch of dumb scientists running around on an alien moon, petting snakes, and drinking goo. Prometheus hesitates to provide clear answers, but clues are offered to members of the audience who are willing and able to seek. Do you know where the opening scene is set? Do you know what the being at the waterfall is doing? Do you know if the LV-223 engineers made mankind? Do you know what the black goo is? How do you know? What's your evidence? The opinions of uninformed characters in the movie? Your own opinions? The opinions of popular critics or YouTubers? If so, this sounds like beliefs, not knowledge. Have you chosen these beliefs? Or have you come to believe what you do through some mysterious process you barely remember, if you were ever even aware of it in the first place? Have you mistaken your beliefs for facts? Like Shaw, I think most people are rarely satisfied with mere belief. We want to know things for certain, but to attain this sense of certainty will often take shortcuts, which can involve deploying self-deception, appealing to authorities, forging evidence, and confusing opinions with facts. Each of these is an erroneous method of arriving at the truth. My own interpretations of the film have been contradictory at times. I've described the opening scene as depicting the creation of life, gifting of fire, and bringing of death. I've described the being at the waterfall as Prometheus, Satan, and an ancestor of the LV-223 engineers. I've described the urns of black goo as Zeus's stolen thunderbolt, Pandora's jar, and a bioweapon. LV-223 has been called Mount Olympus, Tartarus, and Hell. The engineers have been referred to as the Olympian gods, the Titans, Anunnaki, sons of God, and mankind's progenitors. The deacons have been called gods, demigods, Nephilim, creatures, and monsters. These things can't all be true at the same time. I've provided a menu of possible interpretations. It's up to you to determine for yourself which, if any, of these interpretations you find most plausible. If we're lucky, we live for several decades, which is a very short time at the cosmic scale. As creatures with relatively short lifespans, there's hardly enough time to learn everything that there is to learn and come to any definitive conclusions about the nature of life, death, and humanity's purpose. There's very little we can know for sure. It's difficult enough trying to figure out what's true and false about a science fiction film, let alone what may be ultimately true and false in the universe. There's very little we can be certain of. We're not the kind of creatures that can know things for sure. In a future video, I will discuss what kind of creatures we are. There is so much symbolism and meaning in literature, art, drama, film, and the stories of our own lives that we completely miss because we don't have the eyes to see. Despite our limitations, we can develop our perception for symbolism. There are also some things we can be certain about when it comes to Prometheus. There are at least two different kinds of goo. One is authentic, while the other is counterfeit. There are two factions of engineers. One is loyal to the created order, while the other rebels against it. There are at least two kinds of creatures depicted in the film: golems and image bearers. How can we differentiate and discern which is which? You will know them by their fruits. I will close out this video by giving a brief update on the status of this series and what to expect moving forward. There's several more videos that I'd like to create for this series before moving on to analyzing other films. Prometheus is the kind of film that intentionally avoids providing definitive answers. You could drive yourself crazy trying to figure out every single detail and reference and how it fits into the larger narrative. The film leaves enough room to debate these details. To me, Prometheus is not fundamentally about these debatable details. Those are fun aspects of the film, but they're not critical for understanding the story the filmmakers are trying to tell. I could probably go on for an eternity exploring details of the film, but I'm not really interested in doing that. What I am interested in is the perspective the film offers on several existential questions. I think I'll release a few more analysis videos that talk about the symbolism of some of the aspects of the film that I see as overlooked and underrepresented in existing analyses on YouTube and elsewhere. But I want to be careful about how I discuss the bigger questions the film asks. Like I said, Prometheus is a puzzle to be solved. I don't want to solve it for you. In some ways, the goal isn't to get the answer, but to go through the process of discovery. If the only point of homework was to have the right answer and get a good grade, then parents could do their children's homework for them. But the purpose of homework is for the student to learn and develop their skills themselves. Parents and teachers can help, but they shouldn't do the work on the pupil's behalf. For that reason, I don't want to explain every aspect of Prometheus, especially when it comes to the film's central themes and ideas. In many ways, I already feel like I've said too much throughout this series. Perhaps I should have discussed how things like the pyramid scan, green crystal, and Holloway's dialogue referring to David as not a real boy are references and clues, without actually explaining them in depth. So I may end up making a few of the upcoming videos in the Prometheus series available to members only. This may seem lame or disappointing to some, but I suspect I will eventually make everything available to non-members. One reason for my caution about how to proceed with the series has to do with not spoiling everything. Another is that at the time I'm making this video in February 2025, the Film Symbologist channel is still pretty small. Like fire, ideas from smaller channels can be stolen by Prometheus-like content creators and then given to that larger channel's audience. This happens all the time on YouTube, and it's part of the reason why I didn't publish this series years ago. Basically, all this is to say that I'm hoping to begin cautiously winding down my analysis of Prometheus and moving on to other films. While I'm doing this, some videos may not be available initially to non-members of Patreon and the YouTube channel. But if you enjoy content like this, like the video, comment down below, and subscribe to the channel. For early access to new videos and to help support the creation of new content, consider becoming a member of the YouTube channel or Patreon. Links are in the video description below. This is the Film Symbologist. Thanks for watching.